This is the Vision 79 podcast, where my friend Sander and myself, Mason, discuss recent developments in our business and our personal life. The name Vision 79 comes from our respective racing numbers. Sander's is 40, mine is 39, and we have a shared vision for success in business and personal growth. Many successful people have documented their journey and started small, just like us, but we intend to be the first. Can I start that over? What the fuck was that? It's a script. I can't read it. This is the Vision 79 podcast, where my friend Sander and myself, Mason, discuss recent developments in our business and personal growth. The name Vision 79 comes from our respective racing numbers. Sander's is 40, mine is 39, and together we have a shared vision for success in our business and personal lives. Many successful people have started small, just like us, but very few of them have documented their process. We intend to be the first to document our journey from start to finish. We like to start every podcast with a brief business update, where we're at in our careers, so that when we look back on this in the future, we get a general idea, snapshot of where we are. So my weekly update consists of your editing of our bulk recordings, which we're preparing to cover the gap when we quit our jobs and transfer full-time into business. That's going swimmingly.
Yeah, we've completed all of the games and edited, and posts are all done for all of the games that we have planned.
We is just you.
The shorts for the questions are done the first half that we did inside. The outdoor portion is under works right now, but I'd say we're about 2/3 of the way there, or a little bit more than that. Also be 75%.
I wrote this bullet point in here thinking that you were done, because this would mark the end of the bulk recording editing, and I was going to give a big thank you to you for finishing it, but I'll save that for next week when I'm sure it'll be finished.
Yeah, next week it'll be done.
I've continued with the Alex Hormozi offer course to take notes and progress through his online lectures, and that's providing a lot of value. He does worked examples in person that aren't in the book or the podcasts. Recently, I've noticed his podcasts are longer, but kind of it's almost like he recorded one long podcast and then broke it up into many smaller podcasts and then posted the smaller ones first. I got all that info, and now it's a long podcast kind of reiterating everything I've heard for the past 2 months.
Yeah, I found that too. I actually do enjoy the long form style though, because I feel like having it all contained in one big podcast allows me to listen to the broad spectrum of it and then go back and re-listen to parts that I didn't get or didn't make sense to.
Yeah.
Like he talked about LTV or LTGS, CAC,
lifetime value.
Yeah, or lifetime gross
customer.
Or LTGP, lifetime gross profit versus lifetime value, and CAC and stuff like that. And honestly, the math seemed really simple, but I didn't completely understand it. And
from the earlier podcasts?
Yeah, I've listened to like 2 or 3 LTV CAC podcasts at this point, and it doesn't quite click with me the way I want it to. So I'm going to go back this week and re-listen. I think that my problem is coming into the fact that I'm listening without taking notes. I think if I took notes step by step and just took the extra time to do that, I'd actually get it and absorb it. And I know it's an easy concept. Like I know I'm capable of understanding it. I just haven't figured it out yet. So
what's your current understanding of it?
Well, a lifetime value, a lot of people say is, okay, this is how much my business brings in a month. But in reality, you want to look at lifetime gross profit, because that's the amount that you bring in after expenses, right? But I don't understand what CAC is still. I still don't get it. I just can't recite to you what that is. And I don't understand the ratio of LTV to CAC and why that's important, because I don't effectively understand CAC.
My understanding of it is this: lifetime value isn't really a measure of the business; it's a measure of the customer. So lifetime value is how much money that a customer will give you over the course of their time. Right. So if they have a gym subscription, right, and the average customer stays for 5 months, then you'll get 5 months. That's their lifetime value, is the total sum of the 5 months, right?
Right.
But some people leave later, some people leave earlier, so that fluctuates.
It's an average.
Right. So you're ideally, Alex Hormozi says that he does not look at businesses that don't have repeat purchases, right? Yeah. Because if it's a one-time purchase, then the whole game is trying to get new customers, and that's not interesting to him. Yeah. He likes repeat purchases because you have a larger lifetime value for the customer, right? And CAC is CAC, it's cost to acquire customer, right? Which is basically advertising spend. What's your conversion ratio? And the reason that's important is If it costs you $50 to get a new customer, but their LTV is only $55,
yeah,
you're not making much money. Right. So if you're,
I remember his Starbucks example in one of the recent ones. Did you listen to that one?
I don't remember.
He was talking about how the average lifetime value of a Starbucks customer is over $14,000.
Yeah.
Because once they go in, they come back and come back and come back. So that 14,000 is accumulated over like, you know, thousands of $5 lattes that they purchase or whatever. And I just when I got confused was when he started talking. He dove into this other example where it like cost $1,000 to bring someone on, and then it cost $1,000 to employ the person to run or assist that person, but they were charging $2,000 for that product, so they were breaking even. And obviously, I understand that math: 1,000 plus 1,000 equals 2,000.
Right.
But I just didn't understand how he was using LTV and CAC to morph into something that would change that process. Like, I don't understand. Like, I understand, I guess now, since you've explained it a little bit more and I can connect the dots for myself, what LTV and what CAC is, but I don't understand the vehicle that he uses from those statistics to fix whatever problem is happening. I haven't made that connection yet.
Yeah.
And you can help me with that.
I don't think that I've made that connection yet either. It's kind of like, I know what the terms mean, but I don't know how to use them. I know that X and Y are variables, but I don't know how to do a quadrant.
I think my problem with CAC, actually, now, since you've explained it to me, this is really fucking stupid. But when I was listening to him say CAC, I was hearing it as KAK.
Yeah.
And so I was like, what the fuck is CAC? Like, like, what the fuck is KAK stand for? And now you're like, cost to acquire customer. I'm like, oh, I know what that is. I just didn't realize that was fucking CAC.
He's probably said CAC, cost to acquire customer. And while he said cost to acquire customer, you're like, what could the K's be? Like, while he's saying it.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah, that's a big benefit, I feel, to reading the book because it's spelled out in front of you, that you don't get from the audiobook. So I've listened to the $100 million offers, but only an audiobook. So I've listened to it 4 times, super inefficient, because if I read it once, I'd probably get all the information, but I'm retarded and don't like
it's hard to sit down and read when you feel like there's so much on your plate.
Oh, I've got something about that later. Yeah, you're right. It's hard to sit down and do something fucking boring. But I find that the lessons are great because I hate reading. I don't listen half the time, but if I'm engaged and like taking notes and following along and I can pretend that I'm having a conversation with him, then it's helpful. But that's my rudimentary understanding of those. Cool. But to loop it back, I'm finishing that up. And then I've been working on employee training and informational resources for our business. Okay. I think that I'm going overboard with it, but I think that this is probably a product that I would rather go overboard than underboard, because I'm seeing now the results of it going underboard, and it's bad. Yeah. It's a pain in the ass, and I don't want to have those problems. So interestingly, I've used those recent developments to better inform how I think we should structure our system, and importantly, how to put that in writing. So after I finish the informational portion of the documentation that I'm doing, I think it would be great to work together on an employee training portion of it that goes job by job and explains each of them, and then an integration portion which explains how they all work together. Pardon me. And how information sharing should work from leadership flow down and between lower level employees. So
I heard actually I was listening to it was, I think, 15 years of business advice in 90 minutes. It's like one of his newer podcasts, and it's related to what you just said. He said that you have to, as a manager, you have to be really picky or selective with what calls you take and you don't take, right? And so he cited this example when he was running the gym business and he was not sleeping at the gym anymore. He was sleeping at home, and he had an employee call him at 5:30 in the morning, and they're like, oh my God, like, we have an emergency. And the first thing Alex went to was like, oh my God, someone had a heart attack at the gym and died. Right?
My dog died.
What?
Yeah, Trouble died. Yeah,
oh, shit. Sorry, man.
He must have had a heart attack or something. He died. He was sleeping in the kitchen and he passed away.
Oh, really? Yeah. Damn. Sorry, man.
Yeah. My mom texted me and she was like, Trouble passed away. I was like, oh, sorry. He's been on.
You should have been like, that's troubling.
He's been on his way out for a while.
Yeah.
But anyways.
He's a good little dog.
Anyways, yeah, glad you didn't call me about it. Happy it was a text because it would have woken me up. So
yeah, but he was telling this story that someone called him at 5:30 in the morning, and he was like, "Oh my God, like, what's the issue?" And the employee was like, "Well, we have a pipe that's leaking." And he was like, "Okay, like, what would you do if you had a leaky pipe?" And he was like, "Oh, call a plumber." And then Alex was like, "Okay, good." And like, what would you do in the meantime while you wait for that plumber? And they're like, get a bucket. And Alex was like, okay, so why don't you do those two things?
Yeah.
And let me know if you have further issues from there, or figure it out yourself, because there's nothing I can do right now sitting at home that you can't do.
I think like
I remember this. Get a bucket.
I remember this exactly because the way he phrased it was, okay, what do you want me to do when I get there? What do you think I'm gonna do?
Yes.
Yeah. Which really like puts it back in your face, right?
Yeah.
But I feel that with this given example, there's a large inconsistency between what a phone call should be and what a phone call shouldn't be.
Something about that story that I really like too is he accidentally, or maybe purposefully, addressed a methodology that he uses with his management and how he manages employees. At least in my view, he addressed the aspect of the employees you hire should have the confidence in the management and in themselves to be able to solve issues without having repercussions, right? Yeah. And so it's like, from my perspective, if I was being managed by someone and they were a bad manager, if I found a leaky pipe in my office, like, I don't know if I'd have the confidence to call a plumber and induce that expense on the company and get a bucket, right? But he was like, no, like, call a plumber, get a bucket, it's cool, right? And I think that really reflects his management style and how he's done this in other podcasts too, talked about this, but he really treats the employees like family. And like, you as an employee of his company have the capacity to solve these issues and do what you need to do without having to call me for every little thing and approval for every small thing that happens. And I think that's really awesome. And that's something I would want to implement with trustworthy, awesome people that, will obviously take time to hire and time to find. But I think that having that base is really valuable. Yeah. And in that same podcast, he talks about how valuable it is to have people who are intelligent and smart and can solve these issues on their own. And, the more I look at where I currently work at NASA, the more I see value in that. Because there are so many people at NASA that they're paying 70, 80, 90, 100K a year who, don't really care about the job. Right. And they pay these people and they're not emotionally or mentally invested in the project. They don't care to solve these issues, but they still pay them. And, it's like people, if I was the manager, I don't know if I would have hired myself. Right. Because it's like, I see myself, I'm like, I'm kind of a weird hire for that job. I don't have any like aerospace drive or background in anything. I've always been a car guy, so it's like they're hiring just mechanical engineers to try and like compile stuff together. Right. And so they have me, who's like a smart guy, but not really smart in the aerospace space sector that they're looking for. So in my mind, I'm like, why don't you take the time to hire people who are more expensive, who yield more intellectual benefit to your company? Right.
I think that you would have hired yourself for the same reason that my next topic, in a couple topics I'll talk about, for the same reason that someone who I'm working with is trying to hire me, which is we're capable, right?
Yeah.
Sure. We have a strong background, like a big beefy resume. We can carry ourselves in conversation. We're articulate and we're capable, and we will learn, right?
Yeah.
So I think that you would have hired yourself for the same reason that we are hired at our current jobs, which is we showed that we're capable, right?
Sure.
I think you would have then shortly fired yourself afterwards when you found out that we don't give a fuck and don't want to be there. Even though we do our job, we're not invested.
Right.
And
I think
don't want to be there.
That's more of the point I was making.
Yeah.
Because it's like I see all these people at my workplace who are just not invested in the job at all. And then there's like a very small handful that really, really care.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why doesn't NASA or Jacobs or whatever focus on finding those people? Right. And I think part of it has to do with like with a government job, you have so much security that it's a real hassle to fire someone unless you decide to spin a basketball on, in your company office and get a security violation.
But even then, they won't fire you. They'll just
even then they'll just postpone your pay for a week and tell you to fuck off.
Exactly the issue. Is you have to have a reason to fire someone, and your reason can't be, well, they're not as good at their job as I want them to be. The reason has to be they're violating rules, they're touching people at work, they're saying racist shit at their desk. Like It has to be fucked stuff. Whereas a huge benefit to us running our business is you're not completing the job to my satisfaction. I would like you to leave. I don't think we work well together. I want someone who excels, right? And I think that is it's a huge benefit for us, and it's a really critical lesson to carry on as we start building larger businesses.
And I think it's going to be really hard at first to find those good people.
We'll probably have turnover.
We'll have some high turnover, and I don't think it will be from people leaving. I think it will have to be from either firing people, or if we hire someone into a management position that we find out isn't fit for a management position, it'll be demotions, and then they'll have to leave. Right? It'll be a mix of things. But I think as we progress and as we excel through this process, we'll eventually get to a point where we have a better group of people to choose from. And
I think
it's become easier, right? I think it will become easier to find good people, but I think it will still be hard to find people who bonus the level of talent in your business, right? I think it will become easy to find people at the same level, but it'll become increasingly harder to find people who are closer and closer to that upper echelon of talent and intelligence.
Right. Well, and additionally, when you find somebody, an employee that does work well and does vibe with you and speaks the same language, I'll give you an example. Someone that we both know is recently let go. If he recommended somebody to take that job position, how seriously would you consider that candidate versus me saying, I'm going on a trip for 6 months. There's this guy I know that I want to talk to you. I think he can fill my spot for 6 months, right?
Yeah.
You have much more confidence in the person I'm referring because I'm somebody who you enjoy working with. So similarly, if we have employees who we have a vested interest in and trust and work well together, they might say, hey, I know somebody. You guys are hiring? You need more employees? I know somebody. I'll refer them. And we'll take their word for it because they're reputable employees. But I think that gets lost really quickly as you scale businesses and get larger. Which is why Northrop and NASA have such a terrible issue with it, because the flow down, like the leadership flow down, doesn't reach the depths where it needs to.
And the funny thing is that they try, like the wages and salaries at NASA or for NASA contractors are not competitive with other mechanical engineering jobs, right?
No, not at all.
Like the base pay for my position, I think, is 65 or 64K a year, right? I make 69.
Nice.
Right?
Not just 69.
69,420 actually.
Right on.
Which is fucking hilarious. But, the base pay is 64, 65. But if I were to, get a job at Blue Origin or, Boeing
SpaceX.
Or SpaceX or any of these other companies, my base pay would probably be somewhere around 75, 80.
Do you know what those all have in common? All those companies?
Well, they're privately owned.
Private.
Yeah. Yeah, they're privately owned, not government. But it's funny because the government tries to save money by lowering the salary.
Right.
But then they attract people who are less qualified because they can't get the jobs at these other places, or at least usually people who are less qualified. They can't get these jobs at these other places. And then they are paying just a bunch of people who could be replaced by someone who's smarter for just 20K more a year.
Right.
Right. And so then they go over budget and they're like, oh my God, why are we going over budget? Why is it taking so much time? And it's like, well, because 25 monkeys can't replace one smart person.
Right.
And I mean, that's just where it comes down for me.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a valid point. And I think that the challenge is, how do you maintain what we're talking about? How do you maintain this philosophy when you have 6,000 employees? And how do you delegate information from top down? I think that owning a smaller business, right now, I digress. Owning a smaller business will give us the opportunity to work a system that is functional. And then as we grow larger businesses, all we have to do is scale it.
Right.
And at that point, we're making it. We're going to make it work. So anyways, those are all my business updates. I also have life updates before we get to the meat of the podcast. Do you have any more business updates before?
No more business updates.
My life updates. We have successfully auctioned off BMW 335. Super happy. I'm glad it's done.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of the listing that we made.
Yeah, I thought it was really good.
Here's the breakdown. This car was an investment for us. Neither one of us had enough money to buy it on our own, so we bought it together. Are you comfortable with me talking about numbers?
Yeah, we can talk numbers.
Sander paid $3,000 and I paid $2,000 for $5,000. The function of this car, Sander drives a Miata and I drive a Camaro. The Camaro is not reliable at all. And when my car's broken, I drive Sander's. But if we only have two cars, then I'm kind of shit out of luck. So we bought this car as a filler just in case one of our cars went down. And then Sander got a 330, crashed that, got a 530, really great deal on the 530. And the 530 is naturally aspirated with much less maintenance issues. The 335
and much less lower mileage.
Right.
It is mileage. Under half of the mileage that the 330 has.
Yeah. The 335 has twin turbos and higher mileage, 110,000 miles. So reliability concerns there. So we decided, you know what, we got a great deal on it. Let's flip it. So we put a little bit of money into it. Ultimately, all in all, we ended up paying $6,175 for the car. Ready to go, listed. So our intent was to buy the car for like $5,000, use it for the time that we need it, and then sell it for at least some profit. We just wanted to be in the green. We sold the car for $8,800, meaning that our profits fall out to be, we did an interesting split. All of the cost fell to Sander after we bought the car. So Sander's fully reimbursed with that. But since Sander did the work on the car, Sander got 75% of the profit and I got 25%. So the numbers fell out to be Sander's gross take home of that $8,800 is $6,094 and mine is $2,606. So that's a profit for Sander of $1,968, which is 47% ROI. And I took home $656, which is 32% ROI. So the fact that we were able to buy a car, successfully use it, then list it and sell it for an average of 40% ROI over the course of 3 months is pretty, I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. We put a lot of work into advertising.
I think with this specific situation, it feels like a break even to me because with the amount of effort that went into, especially dealing with the listing agent, was excruciating at times.
Yeah.
And so I think there were times where it was super frustrating and super time consuming to deal with. But I think with round 2, now that we have a specific listing agent that we can contact, I think it could work as long as we have, a really good set car to do it with.
Right.
But overall, I think it's fair.
Yeah,
it's fair.
I think, and I ran the numbers afterwards with like average listings in cars and bids, I'll mind you, because I can't see what cars have sold for on Marketplace and eBay, et cetera. I can only see what cars.
And we're only selling on cars and bids anyway, so that makes sense.
Right. Well, my point being, a car might sell on Marketplace for an average of 20% lower than on cars and bids.
Yeah.
So I've got to compare apples to apples, right? Although I'm sure if you compare apples to oranges, we're getting far more than the average selling price of these cars.
Yeah.
But we were at 94% average for similar models of our car. And we had 112% the average mileage. So we had 12% higher mileage than the average and only 6% less than the average of the selling price. So ultimately, I think that's a good deal.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
Right. Although I will say, mileage aside, ours was a very clean model. And I think that I think that
the buyer wants to drive it home to Pennsylvania.
Which is bold, the BMW.
It is bold. I don't know if I would have even done that in my 330 without tools and a couple no-name, regular parts on hand.
It's bold, but power to him. I mean, it's such a clean car. I think that I can easily see it going any other day for more money, but ultimately we can't control that. We did as much advertising as we could. We had, I think, right on the standard deviation for number of comments on our post and number of bids. And as it stands right now, we're at 110% the average amount of views. But on Cars and Bids, a listing collects views over its entire life, even after it's sold. So we're at 110% views, and we just sold the car. So all these other cars have been accumulating views for months. And people do go back and look at past cars. I'm doing it right now. So my guesstimate is we had close to 70% higher the average number of views, which is huge. I think it's genuinely that big.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we had 6,155 views when the car sold. And now already 2 days later, we're at 6,747.
Yeah.
So I can easily see that growing into the 8s or 9s as we go on. So I think that our advertising did help us. And ultimately, there's nothing more we could do from that. So I'm happy with what it is. We made money on it and we learned a lot of lessons. So now, if we ever want to sell one of our cars, let's say, I don't know, you decide to sell the 530 and get something else. We're familiar with the process. We have an inside man and an agent now. And if we ever want to help somebody else sell their car, we know how to do it proficiently and can take profit on it.
Yeah. If I ever go to sell the 532, I have a hookup with Mako on Suntree, and I can have them respray that car.
Oh, cool.
And like get, not for free, obviously, but for cheaper.
Right.
And, get rid of all that clear coat crackling on the roof and the trunk and the hood and stuff. Because with that car with a clean paint job and a couple of the small dents pulled out is,
good condition,
aesthetically perfect.
Right. And you got a great deal on it. So
yeah,
if you ever did have to sell it, I think that you can confidently say you'll make your money back in that car.
I think so. Yeah.
Interestingly, also, I had this thought in terms of like, if we wanted to do this again, for one, I think we can cut down significantly on the hours that it takes because we do have the experience now. We know what to expect. Yeah. And then also, I think that, additionally, it won't be a 75-25 split. It'll probably be 50-50, so you'll get more input from me. But I think that what's interesting is for us to buy a car at a good deal and list it and sell it, we'll be making the profit that we earn over our investment price. But if we convince somebody who has a car that we'll sell it for them, we get a percentage of the total price regardless.
I actually have an update about that. One of the people I reached out to reached back out to me. So
when they said,
how much would it cost?
4.5%.
Yeah. So we can reach back out to them. I haven't responded to them yet. I want to run it by you.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally game.
Yeah. Wait, I just wanted to craft a message.
What's the car?
It's a 1947 modified Lincoln. So it's like a hot rod. Yeah.
Like a rat rod or like a...
No, like clean.
Wow.
Yeah, it's cool. It's
white. How much does he have it listed for?
White. 43.
Okay, that's solid commission.
Yeah.
4.5% is what Cars and Bids charges the buyer for allowing them to use their website. So for a seller fee to be equal to that buyer's fee, I think is a steal. For us to just come and do all of it for you. But yeah, we'll talk about it off there.
Yeah.
So that's the 335 completed.
Yep.
I have a couple other life updates. One of them is I was this close to buying an AR-15 2 days ago. Our local gun store was having a store-wide sale. Everything was on sale at cost, so what they buy from the manufacturer. And I was so close to getting this gun. It was a great deal. I have a friend who works for that company. They're Diamondback ARs. And he said, that's the best deal on a Diamondback that you're going to get. And I had the gun in my left hand and my credit card in my right hand. And I was like, I'm going to go for it. It was $470. It was like a $700 gun.
Yeah.
And I talked to my hookup at the gun store because I'm still new to guns. And I was like, I want this. Should I get it? He was like, it's a great deal. And I was like, is it a good gun? He was like, it's a great starter AR. And I was like, are my friends going to laugh at me for shooting this if I bring it to the range with them? And he's like, no, it's a great starter gun. And I was like, I don't like how you're quantifying everything as
Is this like the
gun.
1.6 liter Miata
exactly.
when I could have the 1.8?
Exactly. So I turned to my car friend who also knows guns. And I was like, okay, the guns that the Secret Service use, everybody's talking about the guns that the Secret Service use now because they are like bespoke. They're singers of guns, right? Yeah. I was like, if those guns are like a Porsche Singer, right? What's this gun? Is it like an M-Class BMW? Like, is this an M3 or something? And he was like, it's like a mid-series BMW. And I was like an M3. And he was like, no, but maybe it's turbocharged, but it doesn't have the M badge. And I was like, I put it back on the rack. I was like, fuck that. I'm going to save my money. I'll come back and get a better one later on. Yeah. I was this close. And the last note that I have on my gun stuff is my concealed carry holster came in. And it's fucking sick. It's pretty comfortable. Mm-hmm. And it conceals really well, way better than I thought it would, which is super exciting. I was worried because, a lot of concealed carry people were
Is that a gun in your pants or are you just happy to see me?
Neither. a lot of gun guys wear like cargo pants and like big shirts, or they're heavier or way more jacked than me, so it covers. But I've been carrying it for the past week, and it feels great. And you can't see it most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. My last life update is I totally botched this job strategy at work. A few months ago, my boss was like, "Hey, can you come in to work on time? People are talking about you." I was like, "Yeah." And that was on a Friday. And Monday, I didn't wake up on time. It was like noon because we lost power. And I was like, well, it probably looks better to not go in at all than to come in late on the day I told him I wouldn't. So I didn't come in at all. And the next day I came in, he was like, "I need to talk with you." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Like, what's going on?" And he was like, "I just asked you to come in early, and then you no call, no show this really important meeting." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was a really important meeting, but my power went out, nothing I could do about it." And he was like, "I'm fucking furious with you." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "What's so important about this meeting?" And he was like, "Our contract has ended. The next contract is delayed because the government went through a shutdown and they can't get their heads out of their ass. So we don't have money to pay you for like the next 4 months. Anyone on my team." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so he was like, "No one wants to work with our team members, so I can't find jobs for you guys. There's one team who has requested you by name to go do stuff majority time." And I was like, "Okay." And he was like, let me rephrase this for you. You're the only person, my hand to God, I don't know why. You're the only person who can make a name for our team so I can go find work for the rest of our team. And by you not showing up, that really fucks us." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I don't know why this guy wants me to work with him, because I delivered terrible documents to him in December. They were shit. So I sat down with him for our second meeting. And I was like, "Hey man, like, yeah, I'm sorry I missed Monday." And he's like, "No big deal." And I was like, "Oh, it's my boss thinks it's a big deal." And he was like, "I don't care. It's fine. I know you." Then I was like, "Okay." And, he was like, I was like, "I don't know why you want me to work with you still, because I delivered shit stuff." And he was like, "Yeah, but I see you for who you are and how capable you can be if you're engaged." I was like, "Well, you're right there, but I'm not engaged." And he was like, "Please come work for me full time, leave your position and come work for me." And I was like, "I don't want to do that because I have a good gig here. You know, I can I'm free to be myself and I'm not overloaded with work. I'm not stressed." And he was like, "Then please like do this part-time work with me." And I was like, "Okay." So the last 3 months I've been doing that part-time work. That ended this past week. And he hired me to do part-time work and a level 2 employee to do part-time work.
Okay.
And my assumption was where he's having us do the part-time work together. And then once that's over, he's going to give the full-time position to this level 2 guy. Cool. No worries. Well, by the time our work finished, I was like, "Hey, I really enjoyed working with you. Thanks for having with me." And he was like, "Yeah, if you have any names for that position to recommend, let me know." And I was like, "Oh, it's still open?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Let's sit down and talk about it, because I actually enjoyed working with you guys." And he was like, "Awesome, let's do it. Let's sit down Monday." And I was like, "Awesome." And I had this idea. This would have been so perfect, because my current team doesn't really like me. My boss doesn't really like me. He would be happy to see me go. This new team really, really likes me. The new boss really, really likes me. If I move over there, I know I can leverage a level 2 position, because he hired another level 2 guy to do the part-time work and was going to offer the position to him. Right. Essentially, we did a competition between he and I during the part-time work. I didn't know it, but I won. And he had left the position open for me. So I was like, "Awesome, I'll interview for this position. I'll get it. It'll be great. I can get more pay. He doesn't care what hours I work so long as my work gets done. I could even maybe leverage a part-time position while we transition out of business, so I could do like 10 or 20 hours a week and still get paid if need be. And even if I quit cold turkey in a week, he loves me so much, he'd probably hire me back on if anything, like if it goes up in flames and we need another 9 to 5. So we schedule our meeting, and it has to get pushed today. And so when we eventually go to have our meeting, he messages me and he's like, "Hey man, I just found out from management they have the position filled." I was like, fuck. Because he offered this to me 4 months ago. And I said, no, I did the part-time work. And then I waited another 3 days. And then I was like interested. And so I sat on my hands for too long. And there's an Alex Hormozy quote that I found that reflects this well. And it goes, "Beginners are paralyzed to make a decision because they assume the real world works like school and only has one right answer. In reality, there are many right answers with only one wrong answer: doing nothing." And I did nothing. So I fucked that up. I should have said, "I would like to consider it, but I'd like to do some part-time work with you first. Please like speak to upper management and have the position put on pause for 2 weeks while I try it out. Or I should have just said yes and gone for it. Or I should have just said no and I'm not going to do anything about it. Like I should have made some action, but I didn't. I pussyfooted down. It didn't work. And then I considered it more seriously. And I was like, I think the driving factor for this is more money, which I've already established to him I don't really care about. And the ability to work a part-time job while we quit or have an easier route back into the 9 to 5 if shit goes sideways.
Right.
So I have my own quote after I processed all this, which is one of my favorite quotes. It's from me. If you had a plan B, then you never really had a plan A.
Mm-hmm.
So fuck it.
Yeah.
Who cares? Lesson learned, right? Don't pussyfoot around, make a decision, commit one way or the other. But it doesn't matter ultimately because I'm committed to this business thing. So the fact that I was even considering trying to find a way to make something else work is like, dude, don't bother with it. Like you're doing this.
Yeah.
And that's my last life update. Do you have life updates?
Not really. I mean, super happy to see the 335 sold and that out of the way. Working on the podcast editing. Just did some small stuff around here. A kid came over this morning. His mom came. A kid. His mom came by like 2 weeks ago, and she was like, "Hey, my son."
His mom.
My son's motorcycle is broken. I was wondering. I see you working on cars and bikes. Could you fix it? And I was like, I don't know, maybe. And she was like, okay, like let me take down your number and like I'll send you some like pictures of what's wrong with it and whatever. So this past week, she like texted me some photos and the clutch lever was broken. Like his dad dumped the bike and the lever broke. And so she needed the lever replaced. And she bought these like Amazon replacement levers, which
3D
I love Amazon products. No, it was made out of Chinesium. And so she sent me those photos and I was like, hey, like, I'm not sure these are going to work. Like, you can bring the bike by and the parts by and I can try to install this stuff, but no guarantees. I usually go for OEM or OEM spec parts when I replace stuff. I don't have a lot of faith in Amazon parts unless I can guarantee that they are exactly the same.
Right.
And so the kid actually stopped by this morning, knocked on my door at like 10:30. I told her or him that they could come by between like 10 and 1 today.
Or him? Oh, got it.
Like anyone.
Anonymous. I thought you couldn't tell.
No. And so I, he comes by and he's like, hey, like I'm here with my bike. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, well, let me take a look at it. So I get out there and take a look at it. And like, I'm looking at the clutch lever and it's like sort of similar, sort of different. It's got like it's got an extra rotation part of the lever that like you can adjust how far the lever sits out from the bar in addition to it being mounted to the actual bracketry of the handlebar. As I was looking at it, is kind of trying to figure out how I was going to adjust this and stuff like that. And I started getting it apart and, whatever. And I try to put the new lever back in and the hole for the bolt is too small. So I'm like, hey, like, are you committed to keeping this part? Because, you can return it or I can modify it and make it work. Like, it's up to you.
Right.
And the kid's like 12 and he was like, yeah, like whatever you like need to do to make it work. I was like, okay, whatever. So I got my drill out and I drilled the hole out.
Okay.
So that the bolt could fit through and fit nice and snug. So I drilled that out for him, cleaned it up, reinstalled it, adjusted the stop so that it works right, adjusted his clutch free play because it was a different lever. So I had to adjust it a little bit and just wiped his bike down and he rode it home. And awesome. So I did that this morning for him. Awesome. And like, he was like, oh, like, how much do you want for the work? And I figured his mom was paying because his mom was the one who tested me about it. No, I was like $40, custom fab work, install on a Sunday when I didn't feel like doing it. So I was like $40. And he comes back with like super wrinkly $20 bills. And I'm like, hey, like, are you paying for this or is your mom paying for this? Because like usually like parents will keep their bills folded and then like 12-year-old kids will like crunch them up and put them in a piggy bank.
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, hey, like, are you paying for this or your mom paying for this? And he's like, oh, like I'm paying for it. And I'm like, take the money back. Like, I'm not taking money from you. And he was like, no, I insist. And he was like, well, like my mom is paying 20 and then I'm paying 20. Like I'm splitting it with her. I'm like, okay, cool. you can keep your 20. I'll take your mom's 20, and you have a nice day. So he rode home.
Good humanitarian effort. Maybe
I wasn't gonna make him pay for that. You know, he's just a kid. He's fucking 12 years old, wants to ride his dirt bike around. I'm not gonna fucking make him pay for that shit.
Maybe you won't go to hell now. I mean, that's awesome.
That would be great. But yeah, I fixed that kid's bike this morning and paid for my Wowo and snacks today at Pauhana. So
awesome.
That's good.
Happy to hear it. You mean lunch?
Yeah, lunch. There you go.
Yeah.
So that's the only like life update. Oh, I have more birds on my back porch now. Got 3 or 4 more birds. I don't know. It's hard to count at this point. I don't do well over 5. So,
okay. All right. Let's get into the meat of this podcast then. This, despite our bird ramblings, is a very important podcast because it is our 21st podcast. And I believe it's now a well-known fact that only 1% of podcasters make it past 21 episodes. Yeah. And that's a big deal. It might not seem like a big deal because for most people, 21 is not anything special. 21 podcasts sounds like a month or 2 of work, but 21 weeks is like 6 months.
4 months, 5 months. I guess actually more than
is
that.
It?
Yeah. I think it's about 5 months.
Yeah. Okay. So 4 weeks in a month standard. Yeah. I had February in there, so I was skewing it slightly, but yeah, it's almost half a year of work.
Yeah.
And it's consistency and it's diligently, and with the TikToks and short form content we also film, it's no small feat. So I wanted to take an entire episode to talk about not only why this is a big deal, but how this is in context to other top 1% items. So I have a list here of other top 1%ers because I don't know about you. I don't think I've been in a top 1% group until now. I actually have.
Probably only in racing.
Yeah, exactly. So here are a couple. For running, only about 1% of the world's population has completed a marathon, so 26 miles. I've never done it, that's for sure, right? But of the people who have completed a marathon,
I've probably run 26 miles over the course of my life, though.
I don't even think I have done that. Dude, if you count running on sand as like double points, then I for sure have. We did a lot of running on sand for rowing. Writing. Less than 1% of books ever become bestsellers. So when you see I have whatever New York Times bestseller, it feels like everybody has that. But I think that there are so many writers out there that when you have a bestseller, it is actually special. Chess, only about 1% of players achieve the rank of Grandmaster. My brother played a lot of chess when we were younger, and he got pretty good at it, but never Grandmaster good. He could beat me 6 ways to Sunday and still not top 1%. Culinary artist, less than 1% of chefs achieve Michelin star ratings. So when you see a Michelin star restaurant, these are the types of things where you think 21 episodes isn't a big deal. A Michelin star restaurant isn't a big deal. A best-selling book isn't a big deal. They are. Less than 1% of people who do it.
1 out of every 100 restaurants are Michelin star.
Yeah. Space exploration, less than 1% of applicants are selected to become astronauts. Fitness, only 1% of people can bench press double their body weight. I for sure can't. And IQ, an IQ of 35 or above places an individual in the top 1% of the population.
What above?
135.
135.
So I found a shitty online IQ test to try to see if maybe I could get 135. And I ran out of patience 35 seconds into it and spammed my way through it. And I was like, God, the people who have the patience to take an IQ test just deserve a score of 135 anyways, because I can't be fucked, right? And I have this quote. It's from a character named Taco on a TV show called The League. It says, the SAT tests are culturally biased. That's why I got high and rode a snowmobile through a mall instead of taking them. And that's the energy that I brought to that IQ test. But still, upper echelon of people, right?